Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be with you and to be part once again of the Global Stress Summit. Thank you, Dr. Hannah, for inviting me to be part of this event, which is so important, and especially during these uncertain times when we're all facing high levels of stress from a variety of sources, including various degrees of what I call COVID-19 captivity, or being cooped up in our homes. Dr. Hannah is not only an esteemed colleague, but a wonderful friend, and she's brought together so many great experts to help us deal with these stressful times. I'm learning a lot, and I know all of you are as well. So thank you again, Heidi, for doing all of this for us. Today, I'd like to talk about how social connectedness and social support positively affect our ability to manage stress, even in a time of social distancing. We can still support each other, and we can connect with each other in meaningful ways. I'll talk about that a little later, but first I want to talk about why social engagement and social support is so important to our health and well-being. We can't get rid of stress. Today, it's the coronavirus, but as they keep telling us, this too shall pass. And then tomorrow there'll be another source of stress. Our goal as resilient and creative human beings is to manage stress and to live lives that are productive and rewarding. One of the ways that we can do this is to garner the support of our fellow humans. Now, a large part of the real estate of our brain is devoted to how we handle social interactions. And our brains truly are social brains because much of our information processing is directed toward our social interactions with each other. It's directed towards perception. For instance, if you think about it, if you look out into a crowd of people, you can pick out a loved one just by seeing their face. Even though every single person in that crowd has two eyes, a nose, and a mouth, you can pick your loved one down. Then that's because our brains have special areas that are devoted to face recognition. We have special areas of our brain that are devoted to communication with each other, language production, language comprehension. And there's also a large part of the brain that's devoted to understanding nonverbal and non-language communication, including facial expressions, gestures, posture, and the tone of voice. Further, it's important for us to be able to understand things from another person's perspective and how that might be different from our own. Even young children are able to do this. This skill is called theory of mind, and it's in place by the time a child is 3 or 4 years old. Theory of mind and other social inferencing abilities are located in networks in the center line of the brain, in the front part of the brain, which is called the medial prefrontal cortex. Now, in addition to this, we have areas of the brain that are devoted specifically to social emotions such as embarrassment and shame and guilt and pride and love and empathy. Empathy, like love, is one of the bonds that holds humanity together. We experience two different types of empathy, cognitive and emotional. Cognitive empathy is when we understand that another person is feeling pain or distress and we want to help them and offer comfort. Emotional empathy is when we actually feel their distress or their joy right along with them. Their pain becomes our pain, or their happiness becomes ours, and we hurt or laugh right along with them. Cognitive empathy employs that medial prefrontal cortex that we were just talking about, and emotional empathy also includes part of the back of the brain called the temporal parietal junction. Both are important ways that we connect with each other. And then we have areas of our brain that are devoted to behavior that's social in nature. And so much of our behavior is social, including all those mean things that people do, but all the wonderfully caring things that people do, and altruistic things that we do, and helpful things that we do. So our brains truly are social brains. Now, how do these social brains of ours help us deal with stress? Psychologists and health experts have observed for many decades that people with strong social support and people who were socially engaged with friends and family tended to be, on the whole, more physically healthy and less susceptible to mental illness than people who were less socially engaged. Back in 1985, psychologists Sheldon Cohen and Thomas Wills provided support for what they called the stress buffering hypothesis of social support. They suggested that social support provides protection from stress in two ways. Now, of course, when a stressful event occurs, our stress reaction is dependent upon how we appraise the event. If we see the event as a threat, then we're likely to have a strong stress reaction. If we appraise the event, however, as a challenge that we can handle, or even as an opportunity, then our stress response will be blunted. Cohen and Wills said that the first way in which social support buffers stress is by directly interfacing with a stressful event. When we have people that help us manage a stressful event, it's much less stressful to us. For example, let's say that a tree falls on your house. Now, if you had nobody to help you, that would be an extremely stressful event. But let's say you have a lot of social support. Let's say that your in-laws say, oh, well, you can come live with us. And they live a few towns over, so you gather up your family and you go live with them. And you have helpful neighbors and they say, we'll keep an eye on your house while you're gone. And you have a helpful boss that says, I'll give you some time off so you can go deal with this and take care of what you have to get your house back together. So you have all of these people that are being helpful to you, and that stressful event becomes much less stressful and your stress reaction is blunted. The second way that social support can help us manage stress is indirectly through the way we appraise stressful events. Now, while friends and family may indeed provide a different perspective on the event, they also bolster us as individuals, and their very support for us makes us feel worthy. That increases our self-efficacy, improves our confidence that we can in fact deal effectively with the stressful event, and that lowers our stress reaction at the physiological level. Since Cohen and Wills' hypothesis, decades of research have supported their model. First of all, social connection and social support is associated with lower inflammation in the brain. One major longitudinal study found that measures of social support and social connection were associated with 5 different biomarkers of inflammation 10 years later. Likewise, lower measures of social connectedness were measured with higher inflammation 10 years later. Social integration, which is a measure of your connectedness with family, friends, and community, is also predictive of lower inflammation. Now, a second important feature is that social connectedness and social support is one of the major protective factors against virtually all types of mental illness. Social connectedness is associated with lower incidence of depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar disorder, and even psychotic disorders. And social connectedness buffers against stress, both physically, as measured by lower levels of cortisol secretion and heart rate elevation in the face of stress, and psychologically, as measured by people's perceived response to stress. Finally, social connections and social support release feel-good hormones and neurochemicals such as oxytocin and endorphins, which elevate positive emotions and positive mood and help us to regulate negative emotions in the face of stress and adversity. And that's very important in these times of uncertainty. In contrast, social isolation, which is the opposite of social connectedness, and feelings of loneliness that accompany social isolation predict depressive symptoms, impaired cognitive performance, and are associated with an increased progression of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Social isolation is also associated with predictors of increased stress response, such as elevated morning cortisol and increased blood pressure. Also, social isolation is associated with increased risk for heart disease and stroke. How can loneliness affect our health and well-being so powerfully? One clue could be what's called the gene by environment interaction. Our thoughts and behavior and what goes on in the environment actually affect the way our genes are expressed. That is, whether they're active or inactive. Collaborative research out of New York's Stony Brook and Rush University Medical Center in Chicago suggests that loneliness can alter the differential expression of genes in certain parts of the brain. When examining brains after death of donors who rated themselves as lonely, these researchers found evidence of a number of alterations in gene expression related to disease, particularly in areas related to the reward system of the brain, such as the nucleus accumbens. The researchers speculate that this altered gene expression could affect the ability of the brain to deal with ongoing stress. Simply stated, loneliness over time can alter gene expression and the ability of the brain to deal with stress, possibly through the brain's altered ability to process rewarding stimuli in the environment. We've discussed how really important social interaction and positive connections are for health, processing stress, and for well-being. We know through work in the positive psychology field that positive emotions, which activate the reward system of the brain, are also beneficial to health, and the research we've just discussed suggests that the reward system and social support are crucial for how the brain deals with stress. One theory, then, is that social support works in tandem with the positive reward network through chemical systems of oxytocin and naturally produced opioids, endorphins, in our brains to provide a buffer against stress and disease across the lifespan. Colonello and colleagues surmise that the buffer begins at birth with the release of oxytocin in the positive mother-infant bond. The constant contact of the caregiver with the infant reduces anxiety and modulates stress in the infant through oxytocin and endorphin release and the power of the caregiver's touch. This bond is replaced later in life with positive peer relations. Compassion, social connection, and positive affect toward others have been shown to be associated with the release of oxytocin and other feel-good chemicals, which can continue into old age. Colonello and colleagues suggest that the giving of social support is just as important in this biological regulation system as the receiving of support. Hence, the importance of that empathy system we talked about earlier. Social connections run both ways. Again, the research suggests that the stress system is regulated by social support working in tandem with the positive reward system through the chemical systems of oxytocin and naturally produced opioids in our brains to produce a buffer against stress across the lifespan through a variety of social relationships. Now, I know you're all wondering about pets. There are many positive benefits to pet ownership. And according to a review by Penn State psychologist Robert Matchlock, these include psychological benefits such as reduced depression and loneliness, social benefits such as companionship and social facilitation or a way to meet other pet lovers, and health benefits such as improvements on cardiovascular measures. By far, the largest study involving pets was published in 2017 by Mubanga and colleagues, and it involved a review of the health and death records of more than 3 million Swedish citizens between the ages of 40 and 80. This study found that compared to people living alone without a dog, people living alone with a dog had a 33% lower risk of death and a 36% lower risk of cardiovascular death. The benefits were somewhat lower for people living in multi-person households, but dog owners still had lower risk of death regardless. For those of you who are dog lovers, retrievers and terriers were associated with the greatest benefit. Now, this study couldn't account for confounding variables. Of course, for instance, it may be the case that dog owners get more exercise, although another recent study found that health benefits of dog ownership were not due to exercise. It might also be the case that dog owners tend to live in the suburbs or away from cities where the air may be cleaner. But one final thing to keep in mind when considering pets, especially dogs as social companions, is that they act as social connections to the extent we treat them as people, at least according to a study in 2010 by Klein. It's true that they can be loyal and unconditionally loving. However, dogs also require care and expense. Klein found that dogs may act as a buffer to depression in those who view them as companions. However, for some people, the strains of pet care and ownership are greater than the joys of companionship and can actually increase depressive symptoms. Likewise, McConnell and colleagues found that the benefits of pets were dependent upon the degree to which the owners anthropomorphized or attributed human characteristics to their pets. Now we've talked about the importance of social connectedness for health and stress management. To review, 3 important stress-related advantages are social engagement and social support act as protection against brain inflammation. They're a protective factor against virtually all types of mental illness, and they're a buffer against a strong stress reaction in the face of stressful events. Likewise, we saw that social isolation and loneliness are associated with health risks. And thinking about our current situation, we certainly don't want a measure that we're taking to reduce our health risk in one area, which is social distancing, to increase our health risk in other areas, which include increase in stress-related illness, depression, early dementia, etc. In other words, we can't let social distancing lead to social isolation. So how do we stay socially connected in these times of social distancing? I have some guidelines that I think are important. None of them are original. You've heard most of them before, but I think they're important to emphasize now that we've established how important social connections are for stress management. And the first is maintain regular daily contact with your primary social support group. Your primary social support group may include family members or friends, but regular contact should include voice contact over the phone or over internet conferencing tools. In other words, more than texting or emailing. Regular contact should include vocal or video contact. We suggest that you maintain this contact at least twice a day, maybe once in the morning and once in the late afternoon or evening. Regular contact is especially important if you live alone, or if you know someone who's important to you that lives alone. Please ensure that they receive voice contact with some sort of social support at least once and hopefully twice a day. Secondly, check in with your neighbors. Many people have good relationships with their neighborhood, but some people surprisingly don't even know their neighbors. You've seen photos or videos of the Italians getting together on their balconies and singing or talking with each other. The American equivalent is grabbing a folding lawn chair, a mug of coffee, and getting out there in the driveways or the cul-de-sacs with their neighbors. You can physically get together with your neighbors while maintaining social distance, or you can get together with them over one of the online social networking tools. Many of my neighbors actually winter in Florida, and we all have coffee together a couple of times a month over Zoom. Remember, check in with your neighbors. Make sure any vulnerable neighbors have the groceries and the medicines they need. It's up to each of us to make sure that the people in our orb are not falling through the cracks. Catch up with old friends using online tools. How many times have you thought of someone in the past few years that you haven't seen or heard from? Now is the perfect time to catch up with them. Most everybody's working from home or is spending more time in their house. Now's the time to catch them. Now's the time to re-establish contact with those old acquaintances. And there are so many activities now that we can share online. Some suggestions for this are book clubs. Greg Hurwitz, the novelist, has started an open to the public book club, which he calls the Quarantini Book Club. This book club is pairing a classic novel with an appropriate vodka so that you can read the book and then get together with others online to discuss the book while having a martini made with a vodka that matches the book. This month's book is Crime and Punishment, and the vodka is the Russian vodka Stoli. If you've missed having dinners with your friends, one thing you can do is decide to cook the same meal and share it online together. Just put your tech device on your kitchen counter, prepare the meal together over a glass of wine, and sit down and share the meal over good conversation. An alternative to this is taking interactive cooking classes, and they abound online, and a number of them are free. Another fun thing to do is watch movies with friends. Netflix has an app now called Netflix Party, and this allows you to coordinate movies with other friends and has an online chat that runs at the same time as the movie. Speaking of which, there's another app called 27 that not only allows you to coordinate a movie between two friends, but you can also video chat while the movie's going on. There are a number of different online activities for children as well. Children, for example, can build Legos together while watching each other online and share their creations together. Lego also has an app for kids called Lego Life, where they can share their Lego creations and chat about them. Finally, there's an abundance of online courses to take. Many of these are interactive, and you will never run out of material to learn. In addition to shared activities online, another great thing to do is volunteer to help others. If you are healthy, or if you've already had the virus and have developed antibodies to it, one great thing you can do is volunteer to help others by delivering meals or delivering medicines to those who cannot leave their homes. There are other ways to support others. Types of social support include emotional support, which includes expressions of empathy and trust and caring. Instrumental support, which includes tangible support such as providing food or transportation. And informational support, which includes advice, information, or suggestions. And I challenge you to think about these different types of support and what kinds of support that you might be able to provide in your local area or community at this uncertain time that would be of value to others. Finally, express social gratitude. Expressing gratitude to others is beneficial both to the giver and the receiver. Whenever you get a chance, express gratitude to others. Even if you can't express gratitude directly to other people, even if it's within the confines of your own space through meditation or prayer, gratitude releases the same feel-good chemicals that socially interacting with others does, and it will have benefits for your physical and mental health. So, just to review some of the things that you can do to stay socially connected. Remember to have regular contact with your main social support group. Check in with your neighbors. Catch up with old friends. Share activities online, and there are abundant choices here. Volunteer and help others when you can. And express social gratitude. If you're looking for other activities during your COVID-19 captivity, I've posted a few on my Psychology Today blog. You can just look for my name there. This is Dr. Shelley Carson, and I truly wish you good health, good stress mastery, and abundant social connections. So long and stay well.